gently from the north bank of the river, and lay the great ring of downs that barred his vision. Further south, simple horizon hitherto, his mountains of the moon, his limit behind which lay easier to know. Today, to him gazing south with a newborn needs, the clear sky over their long, low outline seemed to pulsate with promise. The unseen was everything, the unknown the only real fact of life. On this was now the real bank. On the other lay the crowded and colored panorama that his inner eye was seeing so clearly. What seas green, leaping, and crested, what sun-bathed coasts, along which glittered against the olive woods. What quiet with gallant shipping bound for purple islands of wine and spice, island in languorous waters. He rose and descended riverward, then changed his mind and sought the side of the dusty lane. There, in the thick, cool underhedge tangle that bordered it, he could muse roads, and all the wondrous world that it led to, on all the wayfarers that might have trodden it, and the fortunes of the adventures they had gone to seeking out there beyond. Footfalls fell on his figures of one that walked somewhat wearily came into view, and he saw that it was a very dusty one. The wayfarer, as he reached him, a gesture of courtesy that had something foreign about it, hesitated a moment, then with a pleasant turned from the track and sat down by his side of the cool. He seemed tired, and the rat let him rest unquestioned, understanding something in his thoughts, knowing, too, the value all animals attach at times to companionship, when the weary muscles slacken and the mind marks time. The wayfarer was lean and keen-featured, and somewhat bowed. The shawls were thin and long, his eyes much wrinkled at the corner, and he wore gold earrings in his neatly set, well-shaped ears. His knitted jersey shaded blue, his breeches, padded and stained, were based on a blue foundation. Small belongings that he carried were tied up in a blue cotton handkerchief. He rested a while. The stranger sighed, snuffed the air, and looked about him. "That was clover, that warm whiff on the breeze," he remarked. "And those are crop in the field, the grass behind us, and blowing softly between mouthfuls, distant reapers, and yonder rises a blue line of cottage smoke against the woodland. I'll run somewhere close by, for I hear the call of a moorhen. That you're a freshwater mariner. Everything seems asleep, and yet go time. It is a goodly life that you lead, friend. No doubt the best of the world strong enough to lead it." "Yes, it's the life, the only life," responded the water rat dreamily, and without his usual wholehearted conviction. "I did not say exactly that," replied the stranger cautiously, "but best. I've tried it, and I know, and because I've just tried it 6 months of it, and I know it's the best, here footsore and hungry to tramping away from it, tramping southward, following the old cold life, the life which is mine, and which will not let me go." "Then yet another of them?" mused the rat. "And where have you just come fast?" He hardly dared to ask where he was bound for. He seemed to know the well. "Nice little farm," replied the wayfarer briefly. "Up along in that direction." He nodded northwards. "Never mind about it. I could want everything I had any right to expect of life, and more. And here I am here all the same, though glad to be here. So many miles further, so many hours nearer to my heart's desire." His shining eyes had the horizon, and he seemed to be listening for some sound that was wanting from that inland acreage, vocal as it was with the cheerful music and farmyard. "You are not one of us," said the water, "nor yet a farmer, nor even, I should judge, of this country." "Right, stranger. I'm a seafaring rat, I am, and the port I originally hail from, Constantinople, though I'm a sort of foreigner there, too, in a matter of speaking. Constantinople, friend? A fair city, and an ancient and glorious one, too, of Sigurd, king of Norway, and now how he hailed the vivacy ships, and how he and his men rode up through the streets all canopied in their honor with purple and gold, and how the emperor and empress came down and on board his ship. When Sigurd returned home, many of his Northmen remained and entered the Emperor's bodyguard, and my ancestor, Norwegian-born, stayed behind the ships that Sigurd gave with the ships that Sigurd gave seafarers we have ever been, and no wonder. As for me, the city is no more my home than any pleasant port between there and the London River. And they know me. Set me down on any of their quays and foreshore, I am home again. I suppose you go great voyages, said the water rat with growing interest. Months and months on end, and provisions running short, and allowances as to water, and your mind communing with and all that sort of thing? By no means, said the sea rat frankly. What you describe would not suit me at all. I'm in the coasting trade, and rarely it's the jolly times on shore that appeal to me as much as any seafaring. Oh, those southern seaports, the smell of the riding lights at summer. Well, perhaps you have chosen the better way, said the water rat, but rather tell me something of your coasting, then, if you have to, and what sort of harvest an animal of spirit might hope to bring home from its latter days with gallant memories by the fireside. For my life, I confess to me today somewhat narrow and circumscribed. On my last voyage, that landed me eventually in the country, bound with high hopes for my inland, will serve as a good example of many of them, and indeed as an epitome of modern life. Family troubles, as usual, began, and the domestic stone was hoisted, and I shipped myself on board a small trading vessel Constantinople. By classic seas, those every wave throbs with a deathless memory of the Grecian inlands, the Levant. Those were golden days and balmy in and out of harbor all the time, old friends everywhere, sleeping in some ruined cistern during the heat of the day, feasting and strong after sun under great stars set in a velvet sky. Thence we turned and coasted up its shores, swimming in an atmosphere of amber, rose, and aquamarine. Lay in wide landlocked harbors, we roamed through ancient and noble cities. One morning, as the sun rose royally behind us, we rode into Venice gold. Oh, Venice is a fine city wherein a rat can wander at his leisure. Or, when weary of wanderings, consider the edge of the Grand Canal at feasting with his friends, when the air is full of music and the sky full of stars flash and shimmer on the polished steel prows of the swaying gondolas, who walk across the canal at them from side to side. And then the food. Do you? Well, we won't linger over that now. He was silent for a time. The water, too, and enthralled, floated on dreamy canals, and heard a phantom song pealing vaporous grey waves, grey, vapor-lapped walls. Southwards we sailed again at last, continued the coasting down the Italian shore till finally we made Palermo. I quitted for a long, happy spell on shore. I never stick to a ship. One gets narrow-minded and prejudiced. Besides, Sicily is one of my grounds. I know everybody there, and their ways just suit me. I spent in the islands, staying with friends up country. When I grew restless again, I took that was trading to Sardinia and Corsica. Very glad I was to feel the fresh breeze and the sea spray in my face once more. But isn't it very hot and stuffy down in the hold, I think, said the water rat. The seafarer looked at him with the suspicion of a wink. Old hand, he remarked with much simplicity. The captain's cabin's good enough for me. Hard life, by all accounts, murmured the rat, sunk in deep thought. For the crew it is, gravely, again with the ghost of a wink. From Corsica, he went on, use of a ship that was taking wine to the mainland. We made a Lacio, lay to, hauled up our wine casks, and hove them overboard, one to the other by a long line. Then the crew took to the boats and rowed shoreward they went, and drawing after them the long bobbing procession of casks, like asses. On the sand they had horses waiting, which dragged the casks up to the street of the little town with a fine rush and clatter and scramble. When the last We went and refreshed and rested, and sat late into the night, and next morning I was off to the great olive woods for a spell and a rest. I'd done with islands for the time, and ports and shipping were plentiful, so I led a live the peasants, living and watching them work, of, or stretched high on the hillside, Mediterranean, far below me. And so at length, by easy stages, and partly by sea, to Marseilles, and the meeting of old shipmates and the ocean-bound vessels, and feasting once more. Talk of shellfish! As I dream of the shellfish of Marseilles, and wake up crying. That reminds me, Water Rat, you happened to mention that you were hungry, and I ought to have spoken earlier. Stop and take your midday meal with me. My hole is close by. It is some time past, very welcome to whatever there is. Now I call that kind and brotherly of you, said the sea rat. I was indeed hungry when I sat down, and inadvertently happened to mention shellfish. My pangs have been extreme. I should fetch it along out here. I am none too fond of going under unless I am obliged to, and then, while we eat, I could tell you more concerning my pleasant life I lead. At least it is very pleasant to me, and by your attention I judge itself to you, whereas if we go indoors it is one that I shall presently fall asleep. That is indeed an excellent Water Rat, and hurried off home. There he got out the luncheon basket and packed a simple, remembering the stranger's origin and preference. He took care to include a yard of bread, a sausage out of which the garlic sang, some cheese which cried, and a long-necked straw-covered flask containing moonshine shed and garnered in far southern slopes. He returned with all speed, and blushed for pleasure at the old seaman's commendations, as together they unpacked the basket and laid out the contents on the grass by the sea rat, as soon as his hunger was somewhat assuaged, continued the history of his latest voyage, conducting his simple hearer of Spain, landing him at Lisbon, Oporto, and Bordeaux, in the pleasant harbours of Cornwall and Devon, and up the Channel side, where, landing after of another spring, and, fired by sped on a long tramp inland, hungry for the experiment of life on some quiet, very far from the weary beating of any sea. Sputtering with excitement, the Water Rat followed the adventurer league by league, over storm-crowded roadsteads, across harbour bars on a racing tide, and rivers that hid their busy little town around a sudden turn, left him, with a regretful sigh, planted on his dull inland farm, about to hear nothing. By this time the meal was over, and the seafarer returned, his voice more vibrant, his eye lit with a brightness that seemed caught from a sea beacon, filled his glass with the red and glowing vintage of the south. The Water Rat compelled his gaze and held him, body and soul, while he talked. Eyes with a changing, foam-streaked grey-green of leaping northern. In the glass shone a hot ruby that seemed the very heart of the south, who had courage to respond to its pulsation. The twin lights, grey and the steadfast red, mastered the Water Rat and held him bound, fascinated. The quiet world outside there